I'm in South Africa to find truth. In a country where farming is one of the most dangerous jobs on earth.
The farm murders are brutal.
Bullet went in here, came out here.
Where cities are crumbling.
The visible deterioration of South Africa.
Where the men prepare for civil war.
We need to prepare for whatever is coming.
A hydroponic system. A few thousand litres of diesel there.
And their wives fear for their lives.
You're not safe. You're never safe.
He'll probably come and kill us.
Where leaders and criminals stand hand in hand.
Everything that you own, it's ours. Our people are at war in farms now.
It's without compensation.
A nation at boiling point.
There is a genocide coming in South Africa. Within 5 years, a civil war will begin in South Africa.
And I'm here to tell you why. After the end of apartheid in South Africa, Nelson Mandela's African National Congress was hailed by the world as the leader in the creation of a new socially just progressive rainbow nation, a place where all races would coexist peacefully under a prosperous and fair communist system. But in recent years, we haven't heard much of this idyllic progressive Garden of Eden at all. In fact, the international press doesn't speak of South Africa's political situation very much at all. And when they do, the stories stand in stark contrast to the idea of a rainbow nation. My conversation with farmers and many of the country's white minority made South Africa seem like a nation on the verge of total collapse. So I decided I would try to at least have a conversation with a representative of the ANC in an attempt to understand what they believe is going on. Thabo Mokoena is a man that I've been advised is a powerful force within the ANC. Mokoena is a member of the party's provincial executive committee, has been responsible for the running of South Africa's municipalities, and has been granted multi-million rand contracts by the government in Johannesburg. Here were his thoughts on the current state of the nation.
In the past 20 years, we have done very well to try and, build that vision of a rainbow nation, build the economy of our country, compete internationally on businesses, on sports, on culture. There is relative safety in the country. We've got the best infrastructure in the world in terms of our transport systems and even policing and safety and that kind of a thing.
In a country with one of the highest crime rates, a failing police force, and some of the worst transport systems in the world, these claims struck me as simply untrue. I was getting the sense that Thabo was giving me a government-sanctioned version of the truth. But nevertheless, I pressed on. Particularly, I wanted to know about what everyone keeps calling the land issue. That being the expropriation or redistribution of land from white farmers to the black population, something all of the country's major parties have promised to do. To an outsider, this sounds just a little unfair and like something that would stand in direct contrast to the Rainbow Nation mantra. So I asked Thabo to explain it to me.
So there's been very slow progress in terms of addressing the land or redistributing the land. So we must speed up. And it's not the question that government does not have money for compensation or there is no money for compensation in the system. I think it's just part of the problem is that the bureaucracy is way too slow and then it undermines the good objective. So you need to have cutthroat departments that understand the agency and the plight of the people. When they are required to do their work, they must do it.
Are things leaning more towards with or without compensation? I don't know. I'm just curious. Yeah.
Look, the decision that has been taken, it's without compensation.
As strange and radical as the notion of the government simply taking one person's land and giving it to another because of their skin color may sound to the outside world, Tabo's politics actually quite accurately reflect the rest of South Africa's ruling party. Land expropriation without compensation could be carried out at any time, a threat which has only deepened racial divisions here. Many of these farmers are now the 8th or 9th generations of their family to be farming this land, and they have told me they believe this land is worth dying for, which is why I was curious as to what the government planned on doing if white farmers simply refused to give up their land.
There's nothing that government can do that is illegal to the farmers. Neither there is nothing that the farmers can refuse, which is law. So they don't have much options. It is not the intention of the ANC to go and grab the land illegally and that type of thing. No. We will do it within the prescripts of the laws of this particular country. And then if it means that the laws of this country are not adequate to address that, the first thing to do is to introduce the new laws that allows us to be able to. But once it's law, no farmer, no person that can come and say that I am going to disobey this law. No, do it at your own peril.
So it may be illegal to take the land by force using violence right now, but Tabo seemed to be saying that if whites don't give it up willingly, or if they resist, we'll just change the law to allow us to take it violently. This answer took me by surprise, considering the ANC has done a pretty good job of keeping up appearances. But it seems their politics have strayed further from the Rainbow Nation mantra over the years, as their rhetoric more closely mirrors extremist groups like Black First, Land First, who proudly tout the line, land or death, by which they're referring to the death of white farmers.
Black people have been patient enough. We are of the view that we have to fight in order to attain freedom as the black majority in this country. And the fight has to be located in taking back the land and expropriate it back into the people, in seizing the means of production and expropriating everything, or rather redistributing everything equally. And a society that would embody a value system that puts black people first will have to be attained through confrontation, unfortunately, because our people have waited for so long, right? We've waited for so long and nothing is happening in terms of changing our lived experience. So it's very important to have a movement such as BLF who's going to say, we don't want your handovers. We don't want you to feel pity for us. We are coming for you and we are going to get everything that you own. It's ours.
Talking to South Africa's black political class, it's quite clear that the image of the Rainbow Nation we have been sold doesn't quite live up to its promise. In fact, many of the predictions about expropriation of land and civil unrest I heard from rural white farmers are actually echoes of promises spilling from the mouths of the politicians themselves.
The question of war in this country is inevitable. It's definitely coming. We are going to fight.
There's only one logical conclusion here. If things continue the way the ruling government, the activists, and the media are pushing them, and without a major change in the political establishment or serious intervention from Western media and charity, South Africa could very well be looking at a bloody future that will only culminate in almost unimaginable problems for the country. While I've been in South Africa, I've heard a number of heartbreaking stories, but there is one that struck me on a very personal level. I met Janine on my journey through the Karoo, where I've been listening to some horrific accounts of murder, rape, and robbery. Like many other white farming families, Janine's was torn apart in one of South Africa's daily farm attacks. I sat down to hear her story firsthand.
We are now third generation on this farm, third generation. My grandfather farmed here until he died of a heart attack. And then my dad inherited this portion, and his brother inherited the top farm, which my dad eventually over the years bought back. So it's been in the family for more than 100 years. I grew up here. Myself and my 3 siblings grew up here, went to school in Graafnet, which I'm sure you came through, and then went to study in Cape Town. And yeah, it was always our dream to come back, and it was always the intention to come back, not under these circumstances though. My dad was living alone. My mum was in an Alzheimer's home. Sorry, this is quite hard. Because we were so safe here, there was actually no handle on the back door. It was always open. And this security gate was right here. So my dad heard the knock on the door, opened the door, was shot in the stomach. Managed to get to the phone. Yeah, phoned my aunt. Said, I've been shot in the stomach. Put the phone down, phoned our neighbour. And while he said to Jeremy, I've been shot. And while he was on the phone to Jeremy heard the shots. Just kept going. And there was one shot that ricocheted against that wall. All the time my dad's being shot. Back, arms, legs. And my dad slumped over this chair. Slumped forward over this chair. And he was shot in the back of the head here. Just execution style in the back of the head. So it was 8. They found 8 cartridges. But 6... He was shot 6 times. So this is where my dad died. He was killed. Okay. I know, for what, you know. For what? He was a good man. He was an awesome man. And to shoot somebody 6 times, execution style. Gotta take a breather, please. You think it gets easier, and it never does, unfortunately. My dad was, and Louis will back me up, and everybody will back me up, my dad was the most loving person. He would literally give you the shirt of his back to help you. There were so many farmers, and Louis knows, that were battling, that my dad will say, here, use my bucket to be on your feet. Do that. And to cold-bloodedly just get it. So all they took, about 20,000 rand in the safe. They took that, helped themselves to food in the fridge, and then hit the road.
Janine's story is not especially remarkable, nor is it out of the ordinary. What is remarkable is her resilience. Like many of her people, Janine has returned to the farm where her father was killed to rebuild her life in the face of unspeakable horror.
He's killed 2 people. He's destroyed 2 families. And he got 15 years. With these 15 years, he can sit for six years and he'll come back. And he'll probably come and kill us or kill another farmer because he knows how easy it is, that he's got away with it. So justice hasn't been served yet.
These kind of attacks are not uncommon in South Africa. In fact, the statistics show a white farming family is attacked every single day.
Just getting worse and worse and worse. And they're targeting the vulnerable, you know, the 65 plus. That's who they're targeting. And it is just going to get worse. And then the farmers are going to leave. They're going to have no choice but to leave.
Are the government doing anything about this?
No, nothing. The government have done nothing. I haven't heard from a government official, not once, not at all, no phone call, nothing. So what the intention is, it remains a mystery to us.
Janine and other families like hers have told me they are not convinced these brutal attacks are just random acts, but that the South African government may very well be complicit in allowing them to happen as they continue their political agenda to drive out white farmers and take their land.
With overwhelming agreement, unanimous agreement, has resolved that the expropriation of land without compensation should be amongst the mechanisms available to government to give effect to land reform and redistribution. That is what is important.
While watching the crime rates skyrocket against white farmers and the government's rhetoric get more radical, I can only help but wonder how much worse is this going to get in the coming years. In South Africa, you have families right now, young girls, I just saw a picture that just is burned into my mind, having their lips cut, Joker style, up to their ears. 4-year-old girls, entire families massacred, crucified, raped, and they're lucky if it makes the local freaking paper here. It's not covered worldwide as some horrific hate crime. It's not covered worldwide as just a massive injustice happening to these people. No. It doesn't get press coverage. It is not talked about at all. So that is why I'm focusing on some of the just horrors and atrocities that are happening against these farmers because of the lack of coverage. Now, there's also a flip side to this. Of course, not quite the level of farm murder attacks, but people here of all races are still murdered and deal with political corruption and everything. But there is, I'm actually going to give you an example for this. In America, a lot of people look at Donald Trump and they say he is a white supremacist, he is hateful, he is going to destroy the country and cause hate and division. That is what the mainstream media headlines say constantly. Yet, has he done any of the things they accuse him of? Has he taken away people's rights? Has he been oppressing certain groups and just stealing their stuff or speaking out against them, how they should kill them or shoot them? Now, imagine if he actually did that. If he actually came out and said, we should be shooting black people, shoot the black people, shoot the black people. You had Republican politicians actually saying that publicly. Imagine if Donald Trump announced today, I'm going to be confiscating all black people's land, their property, without compensation. That would be absolute chaos and madness in the international press. But it happens in South Africa. Literally that. They say they are going to confiscate white land without compensation. And you have politicians going up and saying, shoot the boar, shoot the boar.
Shoot to kill, kill, shoot to kill, Yamasa, kiss the poor, the farmer.
They burn tires in the streets and the people and the civilians here say we need to kill the white people, and that is not talked about in the international press whatsoever. So that two-prong approach of, one, it is mainly white people being attacked and marginalized by the government. They are about 8% of the population here, and it's legitimate discrimination. It's not like our ridiculous, what we call discrimination in America, where someone gets called a bad name and it's an international headline. No, here they actually even have reverse affirmative action. It's economic black empowerment, I believe, is what it's called, where a ton of whites have just been fired from their job because they're white. And they say, oh, you've got 8% of the population. Well, then you should only be 8% of workers in government jobs and jobs across the country. So there is actual discrimination happening here in South Africa against white people. And it's that two-prong. The mainstream media is ignoring it. They're ignoring the massive injustices happening. And the government is actually discriminating against these people and not in the kind of SJW sense. So I hope that clears up the air for some of you guys. It is certainly not that I think there aren't injustices against other groups in this country. It is certainly not that I think there aren't other important stories involving the entire corruption here and the poverty and just the horrific things happening to all people in South Africa. But I'm focusing specifically on this one story because the other media refuse to report on it. It is politically incorrect to report on it. It is just taboo to talk about. And a lot of you support this channel because I'm willing to talk about a lot of these taboo subjects. So I hope you look forward to the rest of the videos in these series with that context in mind. We've got some great stuff coming forward that really needs to be talked about. One of the most insane things I witnessed when I was in South Africa was the lengths that people go to protect themselves and their homes. Luckily, I'm now back in the snowy tundra of Canada, where we lock our doors and maybe at most have a camera set up to deter burglary. And that actually works. But in the wild west that is South Africa, that kind of negligence is a death wish. What was even more bizarre is I expected this kind of security to be limited to maybe rural farmers isolated on their property. But no, that wasn't the case at all. This kind of fortified home was commonplace for your average working class family all throughout South Africa. Everywhere I looked, there were armed response signs. People no longer rely on the police here. They just can't do the job. Many households instead have private security firms on speed dial. And in fact, many neighborhoods have armed patrols and security WhatsApp groups made up of residents in the area. One we spoke to said they check into it every morning just to make sure they're still alive and not harmed. It's almost impossible for me to convey just how low trust the climate is here and how on edge everything is. So maybe this example will do it for you. In South Africa, there are 3 times as many private security personnel than there are police and army combined. When people go to bed here, it's not just lock the doors. It's not just shut the blinds. It's double check that your barbed wire electric gates outside are locked, pull down the metal bars on your windows and doors, then walk up the stairs to your bedroom and then close the gate in front of your bedroom door, and then lock your bedroom door. In case the people get into your house, then also make sure to sleep with a gun on your bedside table or under your pillow. Here's what Dan Root, a political commentator out of Johannesburg, had to say about the issue.
Life in Johannesburg mostly happens indoors. You move from one secure environment or one security complex to another, or you could move from a gated community to a shopping center, but everything is guarded. And we've probably built more walls in the last 20 years than there are bricks in the Great Wall of China. You know, if you move around Johannesburg, the thing that will strike you the most is that everything is walled in and electrified, and it's very difficult to cope with. I mean, there are coping mechanisms, and I think you can hire private security guards and, have smash and grab film on your car windows all the time. But it's not that easy to live with.
These security measures are a symbol of a country in crisis. A crisis that is changing the very culture in South Africa. When we talk about crime in South Africa, when we talk about farm attacks, when we talk about the black and the white populations, it's hard to really understand the climate here until you see it, until you've lived in it. People in South Africa do not live like we do in the West. And these security gates, these lengths that they go to protect themselves, are a symptom but also a constant reminder of just how fractured, just how damaged and tribalistic their society is. During my investigation into South Africa's farm murders, I've heard plenty of stories, but there is one woman in particular who has seen it all. Eileen de Jager is one of the famous Blood Sisters, a pair of crime scene cleaners who have dealt with the aftermath of more farm murders than anyone else. I wanted to find out if some of the more gruesome stories I've heard about could even possibly be true, and what the Blood Sister herself thought of the crime wave sweeping South Africa.
You never get used to cleaning up crime scenes, especially farm murders. You don't get used to it. The torture that we find have been done on these farm murders are unbelievable. We found pieces of nails being pulled out. We found hands being removed from bodies. We found people raped, brutally murdered, babies, children, the farmers trying to protect their families, and there's just no stopping. The farm murders are brutal. Rolene and I went to this farm murder scene in the northwest, and we came upon this beautiful white house, and everywhere you looked was blood splatter. Since from where you walked in, there was blood against the curtains, the walls, the paintings, the floor, and you could see where two babies were murdered in the bathroom. So they were definitely attacked while giving the babies a bath. One of them actually survived and crawled all the way from the bathroom. He was about 2 years old. Crawled all the way from the bathroom to the main bedroom where the mom was murdered. She was dragged to the bedroom, raped and killed, and then the one baby was murdered in the bath and the other one got out and crawled, and he died there by her side. That was a very terrible one. Another one that stays with me is in Johannesburg, just outside Johannesburg. We had a farm murder where 5 people came in. It was arranged by their domestic worker, and they drowned the 12-year-old boy in boiling hot water. So we had to remove the skin from the bath as it was peeling off him in the hot water. That was a terrible scene.
What's particularly bizarre about the crime in South Africa towards white farmers is much of it is played off as simply robberies gone wrong. But one has to wonder how you can accidentally torture an entire family, accidentally cut someone's eyes out, or accidentally rape them for days. The crimes in this country seem to take on a far more wicked nature than those in most of the world.
It's not about robbing or stealing. It's been classified, especially on the crime stats as well, that it's attacks or robberies, burglaries. But because there is no statistic for farm murders currently in South Africa, the brutality of the farm murders in South Africa is undescribable. The things that you see on farm murders, the torture, the time it took to do the killings, the brutality and the ongoing torture is unbelievable. People's eyes are being removed, parts of their bodies, limbs, being raped with objects, not even by themselves. I think if you look at the worst movies ever made, it's not really a patch against what is really going on there.
I wanted to find out what could motivate such gruesome attacks, but given their sensitive work with the South African police, a state-controlled force, Eileen made it clear she wasn't able to answer certain questions.
90% of the increase we found is due to unemployment, racial discrimination, and there's no hope. If you don't start your own business in South Africa, where are you going to work? There's no work.
Racial discrimination against who, if you don't mind me asking?
I have to be careful. Yeah,
because
I have to be a little bit careful.
We work very closely with government. Racial discrimination against...
No, it's okay.
We have to be so careful.
Even if she couldn't comment on this, with the government nearly ignoring the issue altogether, and certainly not releasing research on it, one can only speculate on motives. But one thing that is becoming certain is that things are getting worse.
They started weekly. We would get one call a week to come and assist at either farm attack or farm murder. Now it's daily. It's definitely daily. It's increased unbelievably.
Hearing these stories from the Blood Sisters is not an easy thing to do. Believe me, I have these just horrific, evil images that they described burned into my memory. But when the South African government refused to publicly discuss this problem and potential solutions to it, and even seem willfully ignorant of it, just playing it off as simple burglaries, we have to do the job that the government and the mainstream media won't, and talk about this issue now, because otherwise we are going to be hearing a lot more of these dreadful tales. It's often said that hard times build strong men, and I've never seen that so in play than in the lives of South African farmers, who prevail through drought, through crime, and the threat of government seizing their lands. But through all the stories I've heard from these strong men, I couldn't help but think of their families. Every day these farmers go out on their land for long hours, often leaving their loved ones at home. And given the horrific nature and increasing frequency of farm attacks, I wanted to hear from these women about what it's like to be a South African farm wife.
In this country, if you're living on a farm, you're not safe. You're never safe. You've got to lock yourself up at night, especially if you're home alone. Just to sleep easy, I just lock the gate, get the gun out, put it on my bedside table. Otherwise you don't fall asleep, you just sit in stress and you can't fall asleep. I sleep with the gun next to my bed at night in case someone breaks in and maybe tries to murder us or steal something. It gives me a lot of anxiety and it makes me feel uneasy about raising a child in this country. I've been thinking about moving to maybe New Zealand or somewhere where it's safe, but then you lose your your religion, your culture, your family, your friends.
One of these women, in fact, had already seen a farm attack take place at their home. Miss Haas and her children were there when her husband was attacked and shot in the face.
I woke up one morning and heard a terrible noise. My son and my little daughter were in the house and I don't know why, but I just screamed. It happened so fast. I ran to my bedroom window and I just saw people jumping over the wall and it was already over. I went outside and I saw the blood. Only then did I realise my husband had been shot. The marks are still on the wall. You hear about this every day. There's not a week that goes by without a farm attack. My husband survived the attack, but others are not as lucky as us. During the week, I'm alone here. My kids go to boarding school, and I almost never go out. I always lock everything. It's had a huge effect on my life. My fears are for another attack. My peace has been stolen. I just never feel safe in my own home.
Despite their husbands' best efforts, these women often feel isolated. Isolated in their homes while their husbands do the work necessary to provide for their family. Isolated in a country where the rate of attacks is growing and the government doesn't seem to care to solve it. And isolated from the rest of the world, whose lack of attention to their stories only drives their fear deeper. So as a result, they live lives behind barbed wire, gated windows, and electric fences. South Africa's white working class is going through an intense crisis. In the last 2 decades, the number of whites living in poverty in the country has been increasing steadily. With the ruling African National Congress introduction of Black economic empowerment laws that seek to place Black workers ahead of ethnic minority workers, many white South Africans have fallen on hard times, finding themselves living in what are colloquially known as white squatter camps. After hearing about an orphanage that was cut off from its financial support for being too white, I visited one such site to find out what kind of life many white South Africans are being forced to live.
Yeah, well, the place is about people that haven't got place to stay, that stays on the street. So we help them, and especially women that is abused with children, and we help them with that. That is what we are doing here. So, and from the public side outside, we don't get any support. So the men here, we are working. We love to do it because, especially women and children, they don't get any support from the government. We don't get anything. We haven't got power or lights, electricity we haven't got here. There's this one guy staying here. Look at this room. One guy.
If this didn't exist, where would these people go?
They will be on street. They will be on the street.
This squatter camp just outside Johannesburg is one of the many across South Africa and is home to some of the country's most disadvantaged people. It is built on the site of an old dumping ground and is home to around 60 people, most of whom are children. Many of the people who live here have been through some of the worst situations and have been failed by the police, social services, and even charities designed to help South Africa's poorest. Yeah, why couldn't you go to one of the hostels that the government has set up?
Because of the skin color. Yeah, and yeah, it's not, well, we just help white people, yeah. Because there's no other place that does it. You know, if you go to, there's many places I know, Jesus Disciples, Manger, those places, they take blacks and they put the whites out, you see. So, yeah, that's about it.
So wait, there are places here that will only help blacks but won't help whites?
Yeah, that's true.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, people find that a very bizarre idea in America.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it, it's just the racism going around.
I'm just here to get my life in order and try to give my daughter a better life.
Were there any other places you could have gone other than here?
No.
Why not?
Nobody else didn't want to help. I've tried a lot, and at the end of the day, Uncle Kubus was the only one that took me in.
Are there no government programs?
Nothing.
This is the only place who could help us with place to stay and things. They are the only ones who helped us with it. No one else wanted.
If it wasn't for them, I would have been in the streets. I want to sleep with my wife and my kids on the street. That's it.
There's no one who can help us. Because this side of the earth it's bad for us. And I'm not lying, it's bad. No one can get jobs around here, we're suffering badly.
Well, where we lived, things were very dangerous. The one day, there was black people walking in the street and they shot through our windows. And I went and the police did nothing.
You can't even walk in the streets around. At night, during the day, they always rape you or they beat you up. They're swearing at you in the language. They know you don't know the language, but they will come and swear at you, breaking you down around you. You don't feel like a person around you anymore. So they're making sure our people, we don't have a life anymore. They will make sure about it.
Have you tried to look into leaving South Africa?
If I can get a chance, I will go. If I can get a better life that side of the seas, I will go. Me and my 2 kids, I need a life to make for them.
In fact, the people here are often refused help based solely on their race. Miss Grace, the de facto mother of the camp, told me how one resident was refused treatment at a hospital because of his white skin, while others were refused a place at a local school for the same reason. In fact, the school asked how many black people were at the camp before refusing based on the fact that there weren't enough.
He told on the TV, on the news, shoot the Boer, kill the Boer. What we are like, just living also, we are also human beings. We also got a life, we are like human beings just like them, just the color in the language is different. But why are they against us? Even black kids were beating my kids up, my 5-year-old. Told them this is not for you anymore. South Africa, it's for ours, for them. And that's why we're like this. I don't want to give my kids a life like this. I want to give them what they need, and I can't. I'm fed up with this country now.
So without this place open, where would these kids be?
They will be on the streets.
This camp isn't like the refugee camps that you see across Europe for illegal migrants. The people here are largely women and children. They want to work. They haven't illegally crossed any borders, and they're trying to do things right. Yet they live like this within their own nation. And while the world touts their love for refugees, because of their skin color, the white minority in South Africa has been forgotten. Thank you so much for watching this video. I just wanted to let you know that this is actually just a short clip from a much larger documentary project I'm working on called Farmlands. Now, there are a million ways you can help with this project and spread the word about the situation going on in South Africa. If you want to know how you can do that, go down to the links below or visit farmlands.online. I'll see you next time.